And we are live.
Hello.
So, yeah, it's nice that we finally made it work and we got together.
Right, right.
And
I know we've been trying for forever.
yeah, exactly. But this is the perfect time.
Yes.
So, hopefully people will find us. Just a minute, I'm going into comments here because, as I said, it's been a while since I've done anything on my channel. But
Well, but if
people do know me. People know
right,
me.
right. People will watch the replay even if they don't catch this right now. But
Yeah, exactly.
that's right. We're just two girls going to talk about Star Trek.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Star Trek. You know that I watched the original Star Trek. It started hey, welcome, Laura.
Hi,
Laura
Laura.
Hammond Davis. Nice to see you. Um, oh, she says she loves Star Trek.
Oh,
Yeah,
very
I
good.
was just about to say that when I was in grade 8, I had basketball practice, an evening basketball practice, and I used to run home from my high school so I could watch Star Trek, the original series, the first season.
Hmm.
Um, so I could watch it on the TV because there's Dance, there's Angela.
Angela's
Hey, Angela,
here.
Hi. I'm
Yay.
sorry, I was just standing there and I didn't see the button enter. I was like,
oh right. No, that's
Okay.
fine. I'm delighted you're here. So I'm Sharon from because we haven't actually met. I was in the chat room when you guys went gaga on Star Trek. So
hi, Sharon.
yeah, so you see I did it the right way. Whoops, that way
Yeah.
is my friend Dali, the Wolf Girl Oracle, and
Hi,
from
Dan.
Down Under.
Down under.
Down
Yeah.
Under
Yeah.
is Dance with Angela. So we were just talking about that these two gals were on another live stream, and the subject of Star Trek came up, and they just went gaga with it, and I was in the chat, and I went, yeah.
Let's get together.
So
Talk
we
Star
decided that we would get together. Hey, Janet, nice to see you. Um, so it'll take a while for people to dribble in. I was thinking to Dali, Angela, I haven't done a lot on my channel for over a year. I mean, I've got stuff that's simulcast to my channel, so I guess it keeps active that way. But I kind of pulled away from it for a while, but I'm so ready to get back in the
Start up
saddle. I've
again.
been keeping busy, collabing on other channels. So, and I'm a tarot reader, intuitive and medium. So, anyways, but Star Trek, I was just saying that I used to run home from my basketball practice. It was an evening practice, and I'd run home to reach, for Tuesdays at 8:30. I still remember the time and everything, where it was season 1 of the original Star Trek, and I just loved it. I just loved it. It just I felt home.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
And
felt I felt like that too because Star Trek was aspiring to be very humanist, right? And
yeah,
was basically focusing in on the human in everything, whereas so many other shows, were still at that time, showing how people were different and how some were more superior than others. But on Star Trek, they had a Lieutenant Uhura on the bridge as the officer on the Enterprise. You know what I mean? So they were so far
yes.
ahead, so far ahead. Hey, Sylvia.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
I loved it. And she was black, and they had the navigator who was Japanese, of Japanese descent. And
And a
yeah, it was
Russian. And a
just,
Russian
as I said,
Chekhov.
yes, and a Russian. That's right. Yeah. When there's still kind of the Cold War going on, they
Yes.
had this Russian fellow. Yeah, I know. And then Scotty. I mean, it was just an international. Hi, Fatima.
Hi,
Glad
Fatima.
you could make it.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, yeah, so it was so great to see this international cast and the lessons. I mean, the set was hokey and I knew that, but still, I just was it just felt so right to me.
It did
And
for me
I
too.
mean, I'm sure I forget who I'm yeah, I forget who my people are. Might be Palladian. I know, Dr. Gail.
Mhm.
She does.
No.
Oh, you should.
Oh, you gotta get to know Dr.
Oh,
Gail.
yeah.
You got it. Yeah,
Except
you got.
you want to know
Look
about
up
all
Dr.
the
Gail.
Okay.
She was an operating room nurse in neurosurgery, so brain surgery. I mean, she was really, her medical knowledge is incredible. And then she decided to retrain as a chiropractor. And but during COVID, her parents couldn't look after themselves. Her mother was quite ill, and she nursed her. But anyways, she died, and then she was nursing her dad. But she said, because she left her practice, she closed it down. She intended to go back to it, but she had time to breathe and just be quiet. And she started to meditate, and she began to have these memories that she actually was working on a triangular craft.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that she was actually the head of the medical facility there, and they would go out and actually rescue. First, she was in the rescue shuttle where they go and get somebody, and it could be Pleiadian or reptilian or whatever, and they would bring them back to. Now, this ship is huge, absolutely huge, and yeah, but they would look after their medical needs and stuff like that. So,
And where is Dr. Gale from? Did she say
she's
originally?
from the States. She's, I think, originally from Tennessee. Is that right, Dali?
I mean, like,
Yeah, I think it's Tennessee. It's Tennessee or
From the
Kentucky or
South.
something like that. Yeah.
the star system.
Yeah, right. So
Which
she's
she's
so
brilliant.
she's got this southern accent, and but she moved to Oregon to be closer to Mount Shasta because there's so much UFO activity there. Now, I was at a show and I asked a question. Well, I can't remember what I asked, but Jen Bushman.
I do.
Yeah, yeah.
Angela,
Jen's
you're going to get introduced to so many people.
yeah, you got yeah.
You
yeah,
are.
Huge.
Anyway,
Yeah.
she told me, get this. This is what came out of her mouth. She says, "You work for the Federation."
I believe that there is a federation. I do. And
Yes,
I believe in
yes.
aliens as
So,
well. So
Star Trek, right? Star Trek, the
Yeah.
Federation.
it to me, it almost seems like Star Trek is imitating life.
Yeah.
Look at all the different types of, like, especially I'm a Next Generation girl. I mean, that's where
Yeah.
I watched the original series too in syndication and the cartoon when it was on. But what really drew me in,
Yeah.
to Star Trek was the Next
I love
Generation.
the
That's
original
my
one,
generation,
but Next Generation is it's my fave.
And look at how many different what I love about it was you have like the Klingons, the Romulans, the Vulcans. You have all these different people, but there's that one episode, and I'm trying to think of the name, where they discovered that they were all seeded by the same race. So everyone
Right.
genetically is related to everybody else.
Yeah.
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 And that I feel like that might be the case even with the way Earth is right now. Well, of course it is. I mean, everybody genetically is related to everybody else, but I think that there are people walking among us who were not necessarily born here. Maybe they had their memories taken from them so that they could have a human experience, but at some point they're going to remember who they are. Right. And I think Dr. Gale is one of those people. She's remembering who she is.
Have memories, and then now she completely is aware of the work she's doing on the ships, right? So anyways, I asked her, what are my roots and stuff like that, and anyway, she said, "Oh, you work on a triangular craft too. You're head of the department where collating reports from Earth." And she said, it's like you got eyes in the back of your head. Because I was a teacher. I'm a retired teacher. You have to have eyes in the back of your head. Yeah. But she said, I would say things. I'd be bending over another, computer, and I'd say, so and so, come on, get back to work.
Well, that makes a lot of sense with alien. If you have an alien origin,
yeah.
I mean, I think that becoming a teacher would be something that would be very natural, right? Because you're subconsciously, even if you don't have the memories there, you're going to be pre-inclined to want to help other people, help society progress, help humanity progress, right? And that's one of the beautiful things about Star Trek is it's a constant there's a constant evolution in the way that humanoids interact with one another from show to show to show to show to show. You start off with the
Yeah.
original series, and there's a lot of conflict between all these different groups of people, except for maybe the Vulcans. But even the Vulcans were kind of uppity, when it came
Yeah.
to how
Oh,
they
yeah.
dealt with humanity. But as
Yeah.
you progress through all these years of shows that have been going on, there is less of that. In the show that's going on right now, Discovery, it's in its last season. The Vulcans on Discovery are much more open-armed to different societies and to different people, even to humanity. They're far more open-armed because they're progressing too.
Any discoveries on one of my streaming services, so I'm going to have to.
Yeah, it's on
start
Paramount
streaming.
Plus. If you have Paramount Plus,
Yeah,
you
I've got
can
Paramount, yeah.
check it out.
That's right.
Now, in my humble opinion, Discovery doesn't feel as much like Star Trek as many of the other shows did. Strange New Worlds, which is another one that's right now. I don't know if either one of you have gotten to see Strange New Worlds, but if you loved the original series, you're going to love Strange New Worlds because it has that feel. It has that sort of campy, but the story's really
the first series was kind of campy, in places. Yeah.
And it was the first, right?
It was. I loved it because it was the first, and and Captain Kirk, yeah. Captain Kirk was over the top. I just loved it all.
Yes.
I'm just going to say hi to Teresa and Snow Wolf and Geek Hibbly. How are you,
everyone? Thanks
Geek
for coming.
Got the episode. The episode was the progenitors.
Yes.
On Star Trek, The New Generation.
Yes.
And so the Federation. So the Federation, I'd love to hear Dr. Gale's perspective on that too. So the Federation were in charge of what? So Sharon, you were part of the Federation inspecting Earth as well in your.
Well, apparently I'm working for the Federation, and then Dr. Gale told me exactly what I was doing. So that was pretty neat. And it made sense because I feel like I'm really busy in my sleep. I can wake up really tired because I've been doing lots of work. And night before last, my left ear was so busy with different sounds, like different frequencies and stuff like that, that I couldn't go to sleep. And so I just went with it. And one day it was the middle of the night, and I woke up, but I hadn't opened my eyes, and I saw all these symbols and geometric shapes and math and all sorts of stuff. I could see this all surrounding me in this kind of the ether. It was just really incredible. I opened my eyes and I could see this exactly the same thing. And I nudged my partner, Lori, and said, I'm sorry to wake you, but I have to tell you what I'm seeing so I can,
remember it.
Well, no, I figured I'd remember it, but at the same time, just tell somebody this is what I'm experiencing. So, I've been having stuff like that happening. Like, I'm having a lot of downloads. So this left ear is like right now it's quiet, but I have, there's lots of stuff happening. Oh, it reminds me, I think a lot of the stuff is, getting our DNA ready and changing for the ascension, being able to be in another dimension, that sort of thing. And what was I going to say about? Oh, there's an episode in The Next Generation where this fellow comes on board, and I can't remember the whole story except that his body starts to change, like his vibration starts to change, and at the end of what's that? The Traveler. Yes, the Traveler. Yeah, and at the end he becomes all of this energy of light. And so that really resonated with me back then, and because I've been around the this kind of stuff. My mother was very much into this kind of stuff. I mean, she wasn't a science fiction fan, but she was into meditation and, reading Seth, and, this was in the late 60s. So I was a teenager, and So I've been around this for a long time. But anyways, I'm doing all the talking.
That's okay.
Yeah,
Well,
I
I
wanted
wanted
to like ask what the Federation's job is. So the Federation in Trek is to maintain peace
Yes,
between all
kind of
the,
like NATO. I thought it was kind of like NATO.
like a NATO and a
Yeah.
UN thing. Yeah. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, yeah, those institutions on Earth have so much
Yeah.
bad energy. And the
Yeah.
Federation also, there was a war. I think, was there a war and then that resulted in peace, and the Federation was an agreement by all of the races to work together.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I'm interested in progenitor now because I want to know when they knew they were all from the same seed race, and
Yeah.
did that happen to create peace? Like if that happened here on Earth, if we slowly start downloading individually that we're all the same or we're all from the same source race, and that's why we're here actually, because we're trying to create peace like they did it out there in the Federation.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that would actually be a download that could help us evolve.
I think the
Well, I
progenitor
think it is
did help. I mean, I
happening
think
now.
the
Yeah.
progenitor did help to like get everyone to realize that, there was a common root between all of them. But I think the thing that really pushed, like, there was like in Deep Space Nine, they had the war with the Cardassians, and where the Cardassians and the founders
Kardashians.
and the the Kardashians, when the Kardashians got together. No, not that.
Sorry.
Just all wearing really great outfits.
But you remember that war with the founders, and it almost brought about the destruction of the Alpha Quadrant. So that kind of pushed the Romulans to start working with the Federation, a little bit more. But the thing that really did it was, and you find out about this in the show Picard, is the Borg. The Borg destroyed, I think, was it the Borg that destroyed the Romulan homeworld or something? Something happened and the Romulan homeworld was destroyed, and the fragments of the Romulan culture were kind of like reassembled into one place, and the Federation was there to support them, right from the beginning. Captain Picard was personally involved in helping the Romulans reestablish on a new planet. And so it seems like conflict with another group of people is what drove all of those people who were like part of the progenitor race to like find each other. But I think that they seeded the whole galaxy, so it could be that everybody was related at that point. I don't know, but but I wonder if the Federation that exists in our world, if that is, if I wonder if they're watching us because they know we're on the cusp of elevating out of this
Absolutely
3D mentality that we're in right now. And it's like every single day I turn on YouTube and I see people who have like reached that aha moment where they're realizing that there is something higher, and that we're all connected, and that we're connected to something higher, and that we are something higher. And they're just out there waiting. They're waiting for us to go, oh, we get it now. And then they're going to be like the Federation. They'll come swooping in and start helping us elevate our society, help us get rid of our diseases, help us find a way to peace with everyone on this planet, So I think that's the feeling we get.
Speaking about disease, I have a good friend. It's Brenda Taro. I read with her on Saturday, I guess it was, online. And I have my two younger sisters. We're just like a year apart, and Irish Catholic. So, anyways, they've both had colon cancer, and so I haven't had any symptoms. In fact, years ago, they said, you got to go get checked. You got to go check. And I go, nah, I'm fine. I'm fine. And so anyways, last week I went and had it just so that, well, because I had a new doctor and he said, well, considering your two sisters have had colon cancer, you really need to do this. So I did. Clean as a whistle. Nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with me. My friend Brenda said, I'm surrounded by about a dozen angels. And she said, the light is incredible. It's so bright. And she says, they're protecting you. So, yeah, so many of us have awakened. I mean, I have been since I was a child. I can remember sitting in my grandparents' backyard. They had a huge backyard in the city, and this humongous cherry tree, absolutely huge. That us four kids could take a quarter of the tree, right? But I'd be up high in the tree, and I can remember sitting there for hours and looking up, but I wasn't looking. I was in my mind's eye.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I was thinking, we can't be the only people in the universe.
Well, yeah.
I just knew we weren't.
I agree. Oh, Hillbilly corrected me. He said, just prior to the foundation of the Federation, Earth was at war with the Romulans. Okay, gotcha. The Romulan homeworld was destroyed by a supernova. So
and why were the Romulans resisting the Federation? Why were they so long, like, they were always like the curmudgeons in the new generation, and then the Klingons were the bad guys in the original.
Yeah. But the Romulans seemed more advanced. They were, as far as emotions and stuff like that. Well, they were like the Vulcans, right?
They were very closely related to the Vulcans, but they were more like that primal emotion, and the Vulcans were the higher emotion. So the Romulans sort of metaphorically represent that. Wanting to be right and wanting to make out how everybody else is so dumb and manipulate, and the Vulcans
more Earth-like.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, the Romulans, the Cardassians, they all, the Romulans and Cardassians were very much like that, where they had kind of a military-based society. That also had something secretive going on as well. I forget what's the Tel Shiar on the Romulan side, and the Cardassians, I can't remember what theirs is called, but they had one as well where they have sort of like, you have like the military style government, with a where everybody is kind of militant about what they do. And one thing about the Romulans is they did everything by the book. They were very strict according to their laws, but they had the Tel Shiar, who was out there doing like the clandestine spy type stuff, and the Cardassians were like that as well. So they were like they remind me a lot of like Cold War Russia, maybe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so they didn't trust anybody. They didn't trust anybody amongst themselves because of the Tel Shiar. You didn't know who was in the Tel Shiar and who wasn't, right? So it was kind of like, you don't know who's in the Gestapo or not. You don't know who's, somebody who's going to tell on you.
Or the Russian Federation.
Yes, right.
Yeah. So I like what Colorful Foresight says. We've got a Canadian, American, and Australian speaking about the power of this show. How powerful is that?
Yeah.
So I was, as a child, I just knew we couldn't have been, we just couldn't have been the only ones, right? It just didn't feel right to me. So when I came across the original Star Trek, as I said, I felt like it was home. I felt like this really spoke to me. I was going to say something about, we're on the edge of being elevated, of like that the traveler, like the traveler. There's, and the thing is, we're part of that front wave, right? That's has woken up, and we're leading others. I think that's really great. Also, Gene Roddenberry, he was very much into the all of a sudden the name of the of the books. It escapes me.
The Only Planet of Choice. I've actually been reading that since we actually thought about this live, and it's obsessive. I'm like reading it because some of the things he's saying, I think someone earlier said it's a shame we're not following the Prime Directive, which is not to interfere with other species evolution and the sacredness of each race, and how to not do war, basically, because every life is sacred. So it's the only planet of choice. And in that, Gene was really like digging, and he put a lot of that information into the show around things like the Prime Directive. And what else did he talk about? If you look at the Only Planet of Choice, it's got some really important information about why don't the aliens come and just land on a spaceship and say, we're here. And
sorry about that.
Yeah.
Sorry, somebody has Tarot Destroyer on their channel. You need to delete them. I mean, right now they're
Oh, are they trolling us? Here,
yeah, this is a troll. Even though what they're saying, it seems, but it will turn ugly. Oh, it's funny. They're saying being quite reasonable. When I've known this person, they've come in and said we're all damned to hell, basically.
Ah.
So I think I would get rid of them because they can wreak havoc. Anyways, I don't even want to talk about them. So do you know who's? Yeah, there we go. So is it on your channel, Dali, or your channel, Angela?
I don't think so.
I've got it blocked on mine for 24 hours, so I don't know.
You blocked them, so it must have been yours. But then, okay, Skull. Hi, Nils.
Nils, hi. Nils is my friend.
So Geek Hillbilly, the Vulcans has their own Prime Directive. No contact with warp drive is achieved.
Yeah, and that's the stance that they took with humans. It was as soon as they sent off their first rocket that went warp drive, then the Vulcans showed up to let themselves know, let us know that they were there, and to start helping us out.
Okay, I think Nils got the
Thanks,
tarot.
Nils.
Thanks, because I couldn't do it. It was on a guest destination.
Oh,
still there.
Oh,
still
well,
there.
Is he on yours, Angela? Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I've never met them.
Mm-hmm. No, they troll the internet. So.
And how do they get in? Do they have to be subscriber, or how does that work?
They just come
but
in.
Anyways, he's on it. He's on. Okay, we'll let you deal with it, Nils. Thanks for that.
All right, thanks, Nils.
I'm trying to think. Gene Roddenberry, he was very much into
the mediums or the channeling.
The Course in Miracles. Are you familiar with that or heard of it?
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, he was really into that, and so he took took a lot of his lessons from that book. I found that book kind of obtuse. I mean, it has a very simple message, but it has to bury it in all this extra chatter. I used to even go to people's houses and to do the lessons, but that was 30 years ago.
I've never heard of that. I'm gonna have.
Anyways, I gave that. Yeah. Hi, Kathy. Nice to see you.
Hi, Kathy.
All right. So there was a question here that back here, I need to go. I wish I'd started, but it was from Colorful, I think. And she said, I think this is it here. Yeah. With the many spiritual lessons of Star Trek, which one is currently influencing you that you can remember from Star Trek? I think The Traveler. For me.
The Traveler is definitely big.
Yeah.
And then Wesley Crusher became a traveler, and
Oh yeah.
he disappears, right? But he comes back during Picard, the show Picard, and actually takes another person to go become a traveler because she had reached that vibration. So they left together.
Oh, nice.
So he's
Okay,
still out
yeah,
there. He's
yeah.
still out there doing his thing, experiencing, all these higher dimensions, and occasionally we'll stop by and pick somebody up and take them along, to go and do it, which I think is pretty neat.
And it's a spiritual lesson how he's like evolved to a certain level and he can help more than just be on this planet. He's going beyond and going to different people wherever they need help. Or so that's resonating for you about being able to help people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
For sure. I think like my Deanna Troy. Yeah, I know you were talking about Deanna Troy.
She's I actually met Marina Sirtis, and I used to get dressed up. I was going to get the outfit today, but I couldn't get myself together. And
you would have made a good Deanna Troy.
Yeah, and I used to do readings in Florida, so I got dressed up, and I think for me, Deanna, because I just started sort of geeking on her again. It's a little bit like some of my Star Trek friends were a little bit. Sexual. So basically, Deanna was a bit of a fantasy item. And I think one of the spiritual lessons for me is that you can't just see the self as a physical body or as a sexual body. Your body is much more than just a sex item or a sex, because Deanna was often in the New Generation, they had to kind of leave her out of the episodes because she could just use telepathy to kind of work out the script. Oh, how do we solve this problem? Let me just work it out now. And I guess, that lesson is there are some answers to our problems now that are right here, right now, but the human collective consciousness is not ready. And that's still a big thing for me because Deanna was obviously, she was such a big character. She's like one of the top 3 pretty much. Like Worf in New Gen was just, big tough guy who did the rumble tumble and he kind of was more emotionally evolved than the other Klingons, but he didn't really have much character development. But Deanna had so many stories.
Oh, yeah.
Dali, you were talking about, or Sharon, you were talking about the episode she got pregnant.
Yes, I was saying that to my partner this morning. I said, it was quite the episode. I was talking to my daughter about it. I was just on the phone with her. She announced that she's engaged and that she and her partner bought a house. So it was a lovely phone call. But I told her about that. I was doing this show, and I said that when Counselor Troy when that light being came and she was impregnated, and then the baby grew in her like so fast. She gave birth within hours or something. And then the child's life, it was all very much, what's it called? It's
fast tracked.
Fast tracked. Yes, that's it. And I said when I first saw it, it really said to me that, these children that come in, that's what they are. They're light beings, that come in, and you just have them for a little while and guide them, and then they leave again. So yeah, it really made. Of course, I was a young mom then. It really, really made an impact on me.
Resonated with you, yeah.
Oh, very much resonated, yeah.
Yeah.
So which I guess we got off the track of the. Both Dali and I said the traveler would really affects what we're doing now. I don't know if we got your answer, or were you talking about Deanna Troy?
Yeah, like how being a woman is not just about being a sex object. There's a lot of divine feminine, which is, if you think what is the divine, it's a galactic, it's a universal consciousness of the feminine. And what is that? And I think it's been a life journey for me.
Yeah.
Because always women on the earth have been these priestesses or prophetesses or oracles, and I've got a really strong connection to that. So Deanna was kind of like that role for me. So watching her, I kept seeing my male Trekkies have a certain image of her, and we used to fight. The women be like, "No, don't project that on other women in the show." And you can see the role of women evolving throughout Trek from Uhura. Like you were saying, Dali, she was an officer on the bridge.
Yeah,
But she was
exactly.
black.
But the other females were very much sexualized, weren't they, on that bridge?
Well, even
Whereas
she was in the
not.
original series. All those ladies were sexualized, and in Next Generation they were sort of sexualized, and then you get to Deep Space Nine and Voyager, and the women.
I love Captain Janeway.
She's my girl, Captain Janeway.
Yeah.
Yes, but by her, I mean, she was still very feminine, very nurturing, very compassionate. She had all of these kind of stereotypical female qualities to her, but she was in command of Voyager.
Definitely.
She was absolutely in command. There was like no doubt about that. And she was able to juggle that. And when I was promoted into management, I worked at a job for 20 years, and I started off as an employee and worked my way into management. When I first got into management, it was my first management job. That's when Voyager was out, and I really honed my style. I kind of like mirrored her in how she did things with her people, with my people, right? And that got me promoted all the way up to corporate, before the business closed. And I used all the things that I learned from her and how she handled things in my day-to-day. So I owe Kate Mulgrew, you played that character beautifully, and I cannot thank you enough. And she's definitely like in my top 3 captains. It starts with Benjamin Sisko. I have a lot of respect for Benjamin Sisko and the way that he led. He had a nightmare. He had all these different races coming and going, all these different species of alien coming and going from that station. He wasn't traveling in space. He was stuck where he was, and he had to handle all that. Plus, he was the emissary, right, for the Bajorans. So they looked at him as being like connected to God, like a prophet. And even though he didn't believe it, he had to be kind about that to them, and not totally reject it, because
I'm just going to get a sweater. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Go ahead. I'll listen. I'll keep listening.
So that's why I loved him. I loved how he had to juggle all those different things and still be not go crazy, and still, you know what I mean, and not let the stress get to him. He had to juggle all that. So I loved how they wrote Deep Space Nine. So Deep Space Nine has a very warm spot in my heart, but then Voyager comes next, and then Star Trek The Next Generation. Look at you're wearing a bear on your head.
This is from Churchill, Manitoba, the capital of polar bears in Canada.
Oh, it's so cute.
Let me get out my tricorder.
Yes. Right.
I love it. All right. The readings from my tricorder are saying that's not actually a real bear.
It's a bear. I had a koala bear in my dream. What is going on? Oh no. It was rubbing around our legs like a cat and just climbing on our laps and wanting its belly to be scrubbed. Oh my God. We're going to evolve the bear species as well.
Yes.
So
maybe they'll turn into Klingons.
That's a lot about leadership as well, because I think leadership on Trek, and even the academy, the Starfleet Academy, and that whole thing, I learned a lot. We were at uni actually when New Gen came out. So a lot of us were, let's say, not so serious about our studies because we were like interested in Trek and some other substances and parties, but the whole aspiration of the Starfleet Academy was, how are you going to help your world? Whereas we were questioning in the 90s, like, well, is this commercial society? Is that all it is? Is it about making money? And the Starfleet Academy was about actually you're training people to be leaders to actually help the Federation do their job in a universe beyond the galaxy. And so it was much more aspirational, whereas our university careers were sort of, well, how can we do literary theory about some book about that by some dead people that had meaning for some other civilization in the past that's dead, versus this aspiration about going beyond the limits of our culture.
I officially hate Keith's Geek Hillbilly. He has one of the original tricorders.
I do downstairs in the basement. I was looking, all I could find was my phaser, but I couldn't find my tricorder. I have a little tricorder, like a mini version of it.
Oh, look at the sound.
And I've got my original series communicator. And like I said, my phaser.
Where do you get this stuff?
Toy stores.
Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, my phaser. But yeah, I have uniforms too, but I can't fit into them anymore because they were from when I was much younger and I didn't have all this bulk on me. Because I tried to put one on for the show and I'm like, oh, I'm not getting into this. No way, But I have all the different communicator badges and I have quite the collection of Trek stuff.
So when you were in university and Angela and into the next generation, I was a young mom and we were off on an island. I don't know if you know Canada at all, but on the west coast there's the big Vancouver Island, and then there's lots of islands up the coast. And we were up on one called West Thurlow. You could only get there by boat or float plane. And of course, we didn't have any streaming services. This is back in the late 80s, early 90s. So, but what family members did for us, they would tape shows. And one of the shows they taped for us was The Next Generation. So that's how I watched The Next Generation. And it was lovely. I just, I get a new, I get some more shows. It was fantastic. And for my daughter, who was, how old was she then? 88. She went up there when she was 16 months old. And anyway, she was preschooler and she used to watch, I watched, what's the Land of the, the dinosaur one, the baby dinosaur and
Land of the Lost?
And the mom?
No.
The Land of...
Trying to remember that one because that reminds me of my childhood, the baby dinosaur.
Yeah. And the mother. The Earth's changing, all the volcanic activity. And
I think it is Land of the Lost. I think so. And that was, I had a bit of a TV addiction when I grew up. So I loved all of those.
My kids didn't, because we just only had VHS tape. So they grew up really entertaining themselves. It was really interesting to watch. And we didn't have a TV. We brought in channels until late in their teens, way into their teens, because we were now on an island, like Salt Spring Island, which has all the amenities. I'm in my mother's cabin, this rustic cabin. I put my sweater on because I'm in the furthest away from the wood stove. That's the only heat, and we've had a really cold spring. Usually by this time
I'm in Wisconsin, so I could throw a rock and hit Canada.
Right.
Not your part of Canada, but I can hit Toronto. No.
Toronto. Yeah, that's where my daughter lives. Where was I going with that? But anyways, they became very, very they read a lot and they made up their own fun. They made up their own games. For example, how people would buy these kids' kitchens, for kids for play.
Yeah.
Well, what my daughter did was she took an egg carton and she took a normal, 8.5 by 11 size sheet of paper, and she wrapped it around, around the carton, taped it, and then on top she drew her stove elements, and then she put her little pot in that, like she made her own stuff.
Yeah, we did that. We actually built, my brothers and I, our version of a starship in the basement. My mom let us turn our
Oh,
basement into anything
oh,
we wanted. So we built, like, we had a captain's chair, and then we had like navigation and comms, and you know we turned the basement into like a little, it wasn't the Enterprise, but it was our version of a starship.
yeah,
Cool.
And my
yeah.
that was, we had a little black and white TV when I was growing up. My parents didn't let us watch TV, but one of the shows they did let us watch was Star Trek.
The new gen or the
This was the original series.
original series?
Yeah, the original series was in syndication, and that was one of the shows that we were allowed to watch. And it was, I think, on Sunday afternoons is when we would watch it. Right after
Yeah.
church, we'd come home and we would watch Star
You're
Trek.
getting programmed. Like, if you were going to watch one TV show, it will be Trek.
Yes, it was Trek. And then later on, when Battlestar Galactica came out in the late 70s, we watched that. And Buck Rogers,
Very good question.
So
Q.
was Q a god or a space wizard? He was totally a space wizard,
Yeah.
I think. I don't think he was a god. Or maybe he was in a multi-god sort of way, maybe that was Star Trek's nod to like Norse paganism, and any kind of paganism was the fact that there was this pantheon of gods, right? So who knows?
I think he was a
space a-hole. That's what Geek Hillbilly
space.
said. He totally was. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. Well, at the end of the Next Generation, remember, all of a sudden they were in front of this tribunal, like there was this panel.
The way it began. Yep.
Yeah. So basically, the whole thing that they've been involved in was kind of like,
it was
it's our lives, right?
Yes.
You go, you have your life, and then you come back. You come back to home, and they said, okay, what did you learn from that life? And also you had to go through all the emotions of what other people felt like when you did certain things and that kind of stuff. So it was a review of your life. And I felt, when I saw that, I went, oh, that's what that is. It's like the life review, except it was done as a group with the Next Generation. Or was it Picard? I can't remember if Picard was by himself. Anyways, I don't remember. It was such a long time that I saw it.
Picard, the trial never ends. Oh, Geek Hillbilly said it just
Yeah.
as I was saying. The
Trial
trial never ends.
Yeah.
And when you go into the Picard series, Q shows back up again, and it's, I won't tell you because I don't want to spoil it for you guys, but it's kind of exciting that Q is there, for the last season of Picard, or no, the second to the last season of Picard. Q is there.
Do you ever find out who Q is in the Picard series, or is it still an enigma?
He's still kind of an enigma, but you find out that death, something that's said all through the Next Generation and a little bit in Voyager, is that time is not what you perceive it to be.
Yeah.
No, it's a human
not linear, which we know already as mediums. We understand this, but that was a whole new concept at the time, that time is not linear. It's not what you think it is. And so in Picard, what you think is an ending isn't really an ending at all, but a series of things that have happened. And from a human standpoint, looking at it, it felt like an end, but it wasn't an end. The trial never ends,
Okay.
Yeah. Right.
So it's Q like that part of ourselves which is reinventing ourselves? Like, does Q represent, because it was kind of like a Dark Night of the Soul thing as well. He just came in and disrupted your life is one way, and then it's like, no, it's not. And
like Nils said, he was a lot like Loki from the Norse pantheon. He is this necessary chaos that has to occur. A lot of the chaos that comes into our lives we don't feel like it at the time because it's so disruptive, but it's a necessary chaos that takes us to a different place, especially if you don't allow yourself to be consumed with fear.
Yeah.
You'll see the lesson eventually. It will play itself out. And then once you learn that lesson, it's like it's always been there. And it's an aha moment. And it's like, and that's when you really start to feel like how time is not linear, right?
No, it's not.
It's not. It's not. It's totally
No.
not.
20 years ago, I was at a house party. Like I just started dating, became my wife, and we were part of this group that were musicians, and on Tuesday nights get together, and it was acoustic, acoustic jam and singing, that kind of stuff. And on Saturdays, it was usually at someone's big house, and the electric was downstairs, like in the basement, and the acoustic was upstairs. Anyways, I was at this celebration of one guy's 50th birthday, and we're sitting out in the front porch of this house. And I hadn't tried marijuana. I tried it once when I was in university. Didn't like it because with alcohol, if something happened, you could kind of shake it off and do what you had to do, as long as you weren't, falling down drunk.
Inebriated, right?
Yeah. But with weed, I didn't have that control. I couldn't get that control. And anyways, so didn't try it. Anyways, I tried it again at this 50th party. There's a group of us out in this big porch, covered porch, and they're handing it around. Of course, this was much stronger. Like BC is known for, British Columbia is known for its very strong weed, and it was much stronger, So anyways, I took some puffs, and all of a sudden, you're talking about time not being linear. It's not. All of a sudden, I was seeing all of it at the same time. I just, wherever my attention went, I could go and I'd be in the past. So a few seconds, or 30 seconds in the past, or if I concentrate the present, I'd be in the present. But I also could go into the future, and so this was incredible because I was keeping this all straight. My brains felt huge. Something really opened up, and I was navigating all these time, but it wasn't linear. So on the taxi ride home to our place, because we were very good about not drinking and driving, there was Sue beside. I was in the back seat, and Sue was beside me. She was in the center, and a friend of hers was there, and her boyfriend. And I looked at this guy. He was on the porch, and I thought his name was Dexter, and he was talking about stuff that most people went right over their head, but I understood it. And I thought, that guy's from another planet. He's from another planet. So anyways, the way home, he's talking to the cab driver, and the cab driver, who was, a recent immigrant, couldn't understand what this guy was going on about. But what I was doing was feeding the lines to my girlfriend at the time, Sue, and I'd say, okay, he's going to say this next. And the driver's going to say this. And they'd say it. And her eyes went like this, like, who's this woman that I'm dating? Right.
So,
and I said, when we arrive at our place, I said, he's going to give the guy a $40, and this is 20 years ago, a $40 chip, and say, buy some toys for your kids. And that's exactly what he did.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's your mediumship.
Yeah.
Really expanded in that moment with the marijuana influence on you. It really expanded. Exactly. That's what it does for me. I don't drink at all. I used to, but I gave it up 5 years ago. And I have an expansive experience with marijuana in that same way, where I feel like my third eye opens up wide, and there's just sometimes a deeper connection with spirit. I use it a lot in my shamanic practices that I do. And I use it for pain control. But I've had experiences, and I think that is just kind of an effect that it does have on mediums. Katie Moonchild just came into the chat, and I know she uses it for
Anyway, yeah.
expansively too. So
Yeah. I'm very, very sensitive to it. Either I go right to sleep or I go on this trip. Another time was I had a cold, I was feeling awful. And my wife said to me, take this. And it was something that was in a capsule, but it was some sort of marijuana product. And she went off to dinner with friends of ours, and I stayed home. And so, anyways, I took it about half hour, 20 to 30 minutes later. I felt like, like in Get Smart, there's the cone of, do you remember that?
yes,
It felt like this cone of energy came around me. Like I just felt this zzz over my head. And I was transported to a crystalline planet.
Mm.
ooh, like the crystalline entity.
Mm.
Well, the whole, do you remember Superman and the planet
Yeah.
he
Oh,
came
sure, the
in?
Fortress of Solitude. Yeah.
Yeah,
Our
I've seen that a lot.
That was like that. The whole world, the buildings and everything was crystal. Yeah, it was quite the trip.
I used to have waking visions of that planet, whatever series of planets that is. When I was young, I used to see it all the time. And then
You see,
really?
the crystalline, yeah, I used to have, like, I'd have waking transformations in front of my face or in my mind, and I'd see that planet. And then
Yeah.
I'm glad to see someone else has been to one of those planets. Yeah. See, we're carbon based. They were well, I don't know what they would have been based on. It could also be carbon, I guess, but more advanced, right?
More silicon based, maybe.
More silicon based. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So that was really interesting. So I don't it's too unpredictable for me. So I kind of, because I'm so sensitive to it. So I don't do it.
That's okay. It's not for everybody, but I like it. I like it as an, like I said, like an expansive tool for pain. It opens up an awareness in me that I don't naturally have.
Yeah.
Well, I shouldn't say that. I do have it naturally, but I have a constant battle between my spirit and my ego. And when I smoke a little weed or vape a little weed, that ego drops away, and it makes it a lot easier for me to have like deeper connections with, like, if I'm doing an ancestor ritual, like seeing and talking with my ancestors and stuff like that. Silicon-based life, the Hortus. Yeah, Star Trek, the original series, the Hortus.
The Hortus.
We're a silicon-based life form. I think they might have had one on, was it Voyager? I don't know. I'd have to go back and I'm going to watch them all again and again.
Yeah, now I've got
and again.
Really excited about to watch. Dali, I wanted to ask you about that aha moment. You mentioned, like, when you get the, like, time not being linear, and you said, like, you get the aha moment about some perception of reality or the self or both, and then it becomes like you already know that it was already part of your consciousness. So because we look at self-awareness now as a linear thing, kind of, I was a child and I had that consciousness and then this age and that, but you're actually saying something else, like the aha moment, the self-awareness, you realize I actually knew that.
Yes, once I knew it, I knew that it was already there and it had always been there. And there have been moments in my life where I think I walked right up to the cusp of that awareness and looked at it and drew myself back.
Oh, okay.
So there was lots of times in my life where that happened, and Star Trek was part of that too. I mean, the first concepts that I had about there being something beyond us and beings that were from different dimensions was from Star Trek, right? I don't know that I'm from a different planet. I don't think that I am. I think that I'm pretty much earth-based here. But I do have like flashes of memory that I know I'm not making up. It's something that I remember from past lives, and sometimes even what I think might be future lives.
Future. Okay. Yeah.
And that's where I'm like, whoa, okay, so this is not our spirit is not a linear existence at all. It's sometimes like Katie Moonchild, who's in the chat there, she'll describe it as a spiral. And it's like a shape that is undescribable, but a spiral is probably the closest, but it's always relapping up upon itself, so you always have the ability to tap into that knowledge, this universal knowledge that goes from beginning till eternity. A concept that like blows my mind is the understanding that our spirits existed, that our spirit existed before the earth was even formed. There is universes upon universes upon universes that we've experienced for eternity long ago, and eternity often to what we think of as the future. But there is no past and no future. It's all existing all at the same time. This is just what we're experiencing right now through this shell. But there's so much more beyond. It's so much more expansive. And, tapping into that has been like the greatest gift that I have received in my life, is being able to tap into this and start to understand this and see things from the future and from the past and from the present, and collectively talk to all of these ancestors that I have and just gather this information. It makes me think of the progenitor.
And so in progenitor, they were saying that consciousness is one consciousness, or how is it related to progenitor?
Well, it's the when they were all standing together and looking at this being saying, hey, we are your ancestors, all of your ancestors, like all of you in the whole universe, in the whole galaxy, with creatures people that you've not even met yet, we seeded them all. And there's something, they were looking at themselves, right? They were looking at themselves. So I don't know how you could not have a spiritual awakening from that, this idea that, wow, no matter how far back you go, because somebody was, they were the end result of a whole nother group of people who probably all lived and died, right? And that, and then they go back even further, and then they go back even further, and it never ends. There was probably never a beginning, because even before the galaxy was created that Star Trek is in, there was probably something before that. And they don't attribute anything to God or a god. Even Worf, who was so heavily involved in all of his rituals, they claim, the Klingons claim, they killed their gods, right? They killed their gods. So there was never any, like, except for maybe the Bajorans, who had a deep faith, but theirs was a humanistic kind of faith too. There were no gods per se, but there were these spirits, these beings that they knew that elevated and were beyond time. And the progenitor, by being able to play their tape when they all found it, they all found their piece and brought them together and played the tape, and the progenitor said blah blah blah, it, to me, that felt like a very deeply spiritual moment, so that's the best way that I can describe it.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
There was once about 20 years ago. No, it was less than that. But anyways, my wife and I went over to a friend's place who had cancer, and she'd asked my wife. My wife had, because she had what's that? That your muscles really hurt in
Fibromyalgia.
yes, fibromyalgia. She had that, so she used it for pain, like you do, Dali.
Mhm.
Anyway, so Sue brought over some for her, and so we all partook of it. And again, it only took me couple of puffs, and I was off. I'm talking about timelines. I asked about, if you know how some people have posed the question, well, what if you went back, we were able to go back in time and we could eliminate Hitler, right? And it be like in our time? Well, how would that change our timeline? It actually doesn't change. What I saw was
Mhm.
it was like this current timeline that you're on it was shown to me like a plant stem, flower stem. If you go back and change something here, what happens is you can't go back and expect it to be changed. What happens is another,
Another.
well,
Okay.
yeah, another timeline's created.
Because
So that was interesting.
once you exist, you exist. And once
Yeah.
something happened, it's happened. So if you're from the future and you
So
go
that
to
makes me,
the past, you're still existing. So you can't change.
yeah,
Yeah, it's that
you can't
parallel.
change.
That parallel.
What if Kennedy
Parallel.
hadn't been assassinated, sort of thing? It just makes a different timeline. So, and I think also the decisions you make, all the thousands of decisions you make in a day, I think there's all sorts of infinite number of timelines.
Right.
So, yeah. So it's interesting how we stay on this one, though.
Yeah. We still got work to do.
Well, but then ourselves are on those other timelines too, right? So, anyways.
Right. I mean, I believe in a multiverse. I believe that every time we reach a should I go this way or should I go this way point in our lives, that that there is a multiverse reaction to our choices, right?
Yeah.
I have this weird thing where I sometimes wonder if I slip between dimensions. I've had so many times in my life where I woke up and I was in my house with my people, but something dramatically had changed. And everybody's like, what are you talking about? This is how it's always been. And I'm like, no, it's not. So I've had that happen. It makes you feel like you're nuts, but it makes me wonder if we do sometimes slip, our consciousness slips between dimensions, I leave,
probably.
my conscious leaves and another one floats in and they're going like, where am I? And I'm over here going, where am I? I'm wondering if that happens to a lot of people, but it's been happening to me more and more and more. And it makes me wonder, what is that? Why does that happen? Or I'm crazy. It could be that too, I suppose. Let's use the tricorder and find out.
Okay.
No, I'm not crazy. So.
Okay.
Well, when I was talking about the timeline, you can't change, the present timeline. You just create a new one. During that same trip, I transported to this Tibetan monk like figure in the mountains, and I was in a cave with him, talking to him.
That's cool. I want to do that.
No, and then I went somewhere else. That was kind of to the west. You kept going west, and the other one was to the east. Anyways, I could bilocate. That's what I was doing. And
cool.
it was very interesting. Maybe I should dabble in it a little bit more. Maybe just take the drops.
Have a holodeck. That's one of our favorite things.
Holodeck. Oh, and I meant to say when I said I'm working on this triangular craft at night. Before I became aware that's what was going on, top of the cabin, my bedroom's upstairs, and it's a peaked roof, peaked roof. and there's this big skylight here. I can get up and look through it. So about 1 or 2 in the morning, I suddenly was awake for some reason, and I felt pulled to go look out, and I saw the triangular craft.
Oh, wow. So they were communicating. Yeah, connecting. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe they just dropped me off or something. Or maybe say, okay, it's time to go to work.
It was your taxi.
Symbols now.
It was your giant triangle taxi taking you to work.
Yeah.
Back in 1994,
Mhm.
I saw a big triangle craft over Lake Michigan with my goddaughter and my goddaughter's mother. But
Wow.
I don't think that I have any connection. I haven't I don't know. I don't think that I think that I think I'm of this earth. But I think that my soul is pretty ancient, like there's so many things that pop up in meditation and in trances that I'm just like, wow, what is that? There's no way my brain could have made that up, So
I was told by a medium about 30 years ago that I was one of Christ's teachers. That when he went away, in the pyramids, that I was there
during that time.
I know that
was where you don't really see what he, from 12 years old until he was in his 30s.
Yeah, exactly. So he was in Egypt for a time, and I was in the pyramids, and I was one of his teachers.
Wow, that's very interesting.
I don't know what to say about that, but I know that as a kid, I couldn't get enough of Egypt. I read, I read all sorts of books on Egypt. I read novels that were based in Egypt, that kind of thing. I just, I obviously had many lifetimes in Egypt.
Yeah, I feel a strong connection there. We had, at the same period in Australia with the original series of Trek, we had Leonard Nimoy's Mysteries of the Unknown, or whatever that.
Yeah.
Do you remember?
Yes, right. It was what was it called? It was called
I just was obsessed with Leonard Nimoy because I was like very young, thinking, so you're on this Trek show, and now after Trek, this is your next adventure. So I thought, because he did Trek, something was downloaded, and now he had the keys to the ancient cultures, and that's how I got into
Egypt. Yeah. I never thought of it that way, but yeah. What was the name of that show?
I don't know, but
you guys in the chat, come on. What was the name of that Leonard Nimoy show from the 70s?
Yeah, Hope's in the chat with the. So we just thought that the whole thing was connected somehow, because right in Australia it was Saturday afternoons. They do an original series rerun, and then Leonard Nimoy's Mysteries of the Unsolved, whatever. Yeah. And he had that voice. He's got a record, actually. He's got a vinyl. He's released a vinyl. One of my Trek friends has got a copy. But he just had that voice, and we're like all watching some outer space show, then some ancient alien type precursor to the ancient alien Leonard Nimoy's show. And you'd go to Peru and you go to Egypt, and you'd see the same temple kind of structures.
Yeah.
And so there was definitely something in the 70s, I think, was trying to prepare the consciousness through the media, through the TV, trying to download us.
Wayne Rich, In Search of. Yes, that is it. Thank you. Thank you for helping me not lose my mind, because I would have been looking for that all night.
In search of.
Yeah, they had in the 70s, they had a In Search of books. Like you could get like the whole series of books. And at one time in my life, I owned that whole series.
What happened to it?
I don't know. Oh
God.
I think when I moved out of my parents' house and I moved into this house, I don't know if they just didn't come along or if they got sold at a rummage sale. I don't know, but we don't have them anymore. But yeah, it was all the topics that they covered in Search of were in these books, and it was super cool.
because that's now all Graham Hancock and
Yes.
Randall Carlson. They're all
I love
taking
Graham Hancock.
yeah, and they're all taking that on. But
Mhm.
and I remember in Search of, it was about 20 minutes, and it was always like a cliffhanger. We don't really know.
Yes.
And my child mind was like, what? What do you mean? So can you imagine? Like,
Oh, you did
find
this.
the next novel and the next Egyptian. I think then the movie about King Tutankhamun came out, and everybody started dying. So in that movie, so you just kind of that led the consciousness to be always on this cliffhanger,
Right.
which I think maybe was good for our imaginations to allow it to travel and yeah. So I think that's part of the child consciousness needs to travel and needs to expand. Maybe that's the Gen X groups. We were very much tripping before we took the substances, I think. Or maybe that's why we were tripping, because the adults were doing the substances.
Well, seeing that you're in Australia, do you have any connection to the native people of Australia? I mean, because I feel like they got it. Like they understand far more than what we understand as far as like the universe and consciousness and our connection to everything. They seem to, like, in the dream time, like have a lot more knowledge of that stuff than what we have.
They do, but it's not in like Western language.
No. I want to know more.
The best is to, like a lot of Indigenous people say, just come and talk to us, because then they'll tell you stories. But it's not like each tribe will have a bit of their story. Mm-hmm. And if you go to different land, then you'll hear some of the stories from that land. Mm-hmm. And even like really interesting stories, like there'll be a love story. And that's interesting too, because then they say the mountain and the land was created, say, by a heartbreak. Or so you'll go to certain lands in Australia. We have a suburb here that has a lot of depression. And then if you find out the stories there might have been a war or something like that. Mm-hmm. So it's much more like Indigenous storytelling, not sort of how we Westerners might talk about other planets and things like that. But they definitely have that in the dream time.
Well, that's how it is with Native Americans as well. I mean, it might be different stories, but there's a depth to the wisdom in all those stories that our cultures aren't ancient enough to understand.
Yeah.
Until you have this awakening where you're like, oh, wait a second here. My soul is way, way more ancient than and has been around over and over and over again. And some of the things start to make sense, So I want to learn more about these stories from the native people from your country, because I'm just fascinated. And Sharon, up in your area too. I mean, the native people of that area, especially the Pacific Northwest, are really have some amazing stories.
I at the University of Victoria, I attended at the Indigenous center there. As a teacher, I went to this what's called a blanket ceremony, and anyways, it's basically going back and telling what it was like when the Europeans came, mm-hmm. and then it actually was a maternal culture. So when the Europeans came, they expected to meet with the men of the nation, indigenous nation, and no, it was actually the women. But they refused to meet when they, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But I know when they started taking the children, the Europeans started taking the children and putting them into these schools. Anyways, they had us go through role play. And I think I was one of the children. But anyways, waves of taking the children. And either I was a parent that was holding on to my child, I can't remember now, or because I was so into this role play. I think I went back there. And
that was the point, probably.
They came, yeah, and they came to get me, and I just dug in. No, you are not taking me, and like this. And finally, the woman that was running it, she would have her European hat on, and then she would have her other hat. It was where she was indigenous, and finally had to say to me, Sharon, it's okay, relax. I don't have the European hat on anymore. I'm not taking it.
Mm-hmm.
I was determined not to go.
Yeah.
But she could. I had just transported. I mean, I did. I got it right into it.
Now think about how it would have been if these cultures had not been destroyed, and instead we had this approach to them where we wanted to learn,
Yeah.
we wanted to share what we knew and learn what they know, and had this
Well,
transference
it's
of
suddenly,
information
yeah,
instead of this crushing mentality.
yeah,
It's different. We have to be afraid of
yeah.
it. We have to just
I,
destroy
I
it.
suddenly, I had an aha moment. I went, no wonder they had such problems with alcohol. Their children have been taken away.
Yeah.
It, it, it hit me. It hit me there on the blanket. Well, duh.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Can you imagine
awful.
that happening to us? Like some aliens come, for another race from another planet, and they came. Oh, we're taking your children,
Right?
reprogramming.
Or we're taking your children, we're going to take your land, and we're going to put you in a place that
Yeah,
is worthless. We're going to just put you in this
exactly.
place that you
Yeah,
can't do anything with, and we don't care if you die because we're taking everything that you got. Well,
yeah,
that is maybe what the Federation is making sure doesn't happen to us. Keeping an
yeah.
eye on us and making sure that we are, progressing forward the way that we should be, because maybe they seeded us and they want us to do this stuff. I don't know, but
You
yeah. Hi, Kat.
and I at an IMAX theater, with that huge, humongous screen, right? Do you have those in the? You must have them in.
Oh, sure. We do.
Yeah.
You have them in Australia?
So
The IMAX?
Yeah, yeah. They're not that popular anymore, but we've got too
no,
much
they're not
competition.
popular
Yeah.
anymore. But I saw a thing where something happened to Mars, and what they did was an alien somebody took our seeds, I guess, and populated the Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so you mean the species on Mars started to become extinct, or they
Yes.
were dying out?
Yeah,
and they
because
wanted to maintain.
catastrophic handed to happen to Mars. Yeah, and so they seeded the Earth.
And so we've been seeded by many planets in that case for different purposes, or is it mainly from
I
Mars?
can't know exactly. I think it was mainly from Mars, but it made sense to me because they talk about Mesopotamia being the cradle of civilization, but there's different areas around the world where civilizations started at the same time. There's
Yeah,
about 8 or 9 different.
I don't think it was just in Mesopotamia. I think Mesopotamia
No.
was definitely like it's the first. So much of that knowledge and the so much of what existed prior to Mesopotamia, prior to the Younger Dryas situation, is gone. Right, that transference of think about this: if something happened, a giant EMP from the sun, or we have a nuclear war, and our ability to have electricity and data stopped, and millions of people died as a result, or billions of people died as a result. I don't know how to smelt iron. I might be able to figure it out. I've watched enough videos.
Douse for
There's so
water.
much that I don't know how to do. I don't know how to make resistors and capacitors and transistors. I don't know how to do any of that. I would be able to do some simple things to keep myself alive, and I am fairly good at bushcraft type stuff, but I wouldn't be able to take the human race back to where we are right now. And I'm sure that that has happened over and over and over again with the human race. I think the human race is far more ancient than what archaeologists are willing to give credit for, right?
Like Lemuria, right? And
Yes.
um,
Lemuria, Atlantis,
Mm.
those all might have been
Atlantis.
might have all been just different stages of where humanity rose up, you know, and
They were far
with,
more advanced.
with this what is it called, subduction, the way that the Earth's crust goes under, another set of the Earth's crust. Um, things from billions of years ago might not even exist on our planet anymore. They might have been subducted, right?
Yeah.
So we're only seeing what hasn't been subducted,
right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi.
Oh, what the hell?
So what are you seeing?
Cat Shepherd. What the hell? Hi, everyone.
Hi.
That made me laugh.
So I wonder if in Australia, like, there's records of at least 45,000 years that's been researched now archaeologically of human culture, not just remains, but culture, art, and tools and things that they used. And it's not Stone Age, it's more like just more tribal culture where they did gather food and they planted things and they had art. And then there's other remains, 60,000 and 80,000. So that to me is always really interesting because I thought Lemuria and Atlantis were those periods as well, 60,000, 80,000. So I think Australia, because it may have been, I've heard that it's more the Lemurian energy.
Mm-hmm.
That's why, because the Atlantean energy is more of that part where it's colonization. Mm-hmm. And domination. And Lemuria, it's not that Lemuria was perfect. They had other things that they did that was not in balance. But I think the Indigenous Australians were more connected to, say, some of the original star seeds, the seedings of other star systems. And they evolved to a certain point and held on to that memory. Mm-hmm. And that may be why Australia has a certain vibration still different to the planet, and perhaps New Zealand as well. But yeah, it's interesting, that domination of cultures and how we still try to exterminate or dominate a culture because we don't understand it. That's my obsession. Like, how come, like you said, Dali, how come we can't just get around the campfire and have a good old ha ha ha, let's share cultures?
I was in a Catholic school.
I don't know.
I was in a Catholic school that had both nuns and lay people, lay teachers. And I remember being in grade 2, and we had quite a few Native students. Back then we called them Native, but Indigenous students. And to me, they were just another kid. I mean, my best friend when I was in elementary school was from First Nations, and I'm trying to think of the band she was with. But anyways, I guess I never. The outer coding didn't mean anything to me. Like, I married a guy who was Chinese and had 2 beautiful daughters who were half Chinese and half Irish, and they're gorgeous. My one daughter married to a man where his family came over from Pakistan, Muslim. My other daughter, her husband is Métis, so half French and Irish, and French, Irish, and First Nations. So it's just always, I don't know. It's the person I always went for. It's a friend or whatever. The outer coding didn't. The outer casing didn't mean anything to me. Actually, I was, if anything, I was fascinated, by their outer flesh. But the way the nuns treated them, oh, I couldn't figure out They
that,
ran that school.
that exactly what
Fear.
I'm talking about. That fear and that crushing of the culture. You can't have your own language. You can't have your own beliefs. You can't dress the way that you want to dress. You have to dress like us, and you got to be exactly little.
Yeah.
You know, that has wrecked. That has slowed down our spiritual evolution
Absolutely.
dramatically. And that is starting to change now, which is why we're all feeling this shift happening. All of us who are embracing this higher way of being, because we are doing what our ancestors should have done long ago. We're starting to spiritually evolve, for sure.
Yeah.
Hey, you guys, I don't mean to like cut us short, but I do need to get going.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just looking at the time, thinking it was a good time to wrap it up. So
we could have kept going for hours, but
we got
to go back and do it again.
Okay, we got to do this again.
And give us some Star Trek episodes we can discover more. But I think we've got the progenitor down, but let's explore an episode.
Yeah, we should concentrate on an episode or two.
A few.
That would be fabulous. I'd love to do that.
I'll take a look at, some of them. It's been a long time since I've seen them. And I'll check out the Discovery. See what's that?
Yeah,
Just a minute. I need to write those things down before we go.
If you get Paramount Plus,
and
you watch all Star Trek, all the Star Treks.
Okay.
All of them.
I'll have to see how we go down under. Okay.
Yeah. And what was the other you talked about? It wasn't a Star Trek thing, but it was really
Strange New Worlds.
Strange New Worlds. Yes, that was it.
Fabulous. That's Star Trek too. It is. It's Star Trek.
Before.
It is pre Captain Kirk.
Okay.
Okay.
Pike, the Captain Pike.
Right, Pike.
Who was right.
Yeah.
And you remember him from the original series because he was in that box and he was just a head.
Yes.
And yeah. So
yeah.
This is that.
Yeah. No, I totally remember
that happening. So this was a great show. Thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Dali.
Well, let's do it again.
Yeah, let's do it again for sure.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So I have to reduce my screen here and end the stream. So bye everybody. Thanks for dropping in. It was nice to see such familiar faces, and we'll do this again soon. Okay, so press the button.